Look, I opened this jar of rotten baby food, and well, a butterfly came out.
Dying is easy. Comedy is hard. I don't really see murder as funny in its real context, but in the make-believe world, it can be made funny.
Welcome to the Comedians in Elevators podcast. I've got my guest, Stephen. How do I pronounce your name again, Stephen? Zamora.
Stephen?
Can you hear me? Yes.
That'll do it.
Oh,
Steve.
okay.
S-T-E-P-H-E-N, Stephen, yeah.
All right, Stephen. Well, tell us a little bit about yourself.
Well, at the risk of losing your audience, I'll go to the ancient history, shall we say. Born in California, raised in Washington, D.C. and in Great Britain, came back to California to do college. That's kind of where it all started doing radio there. And from then on, in and out of the entertainment kind of effort, started doing some plays, ended up getting my SAG card and did a little bit of work in LA and ended up here in New Mexico.
Very cool.
Still doing some work.
Sounds like New Mexico is the hot spot of a lot of activity lately.
Yes, it's been growing, and I'm very happy to see that.
Very cool. Very cool. Well, you ready to get started?
Yeah, let's go.
Listen, to my regular listeners, I know you don't like when at the beginning of these conversations I ask you to subscribe. None of us like it. I don't like saying it. I don't like it being in here. But it's frustrating. You know what else is frustrating? It's also frustrating when I look in the back end of the YouTube channel and I see the 56% of you that watch frequently haven't yet subscribed. And I know this because I see it in the comments section. You say things like, I didn't know I didn't subscribe. And that's actually what fuels the show. Basically, it's like you're making a donation to the show. So that's why I ask all the time, because it enables us to build and build and build. And we're going for the long term here. Hit the subscribe button and we'll continue to build this show for you. That's my promise. Thank you to all you guys that do subscribe. It means the world to me. All right. So the main point of the podcast is to compare and contrast the comic versus the comedian. So I define the comic as any person telling funny jokes versus the comedian who's a funny person telling any jokes. So Stephen, would you agree that you start as a comic and evolve into a comedian?
Yeah, I think that's pretty easy to say. My only caveat being, I think, as a comedian, that's pretty much a professional endeavor, right? As opposed to a comic who's I'm just a guy trying to be funny and get some laughs, right?
That's one way to look at it. Would you say that maybe the comic writes for a comedian?
Certainly. Yeah, especially if he doesn't want to take the stage and he's funny enough to come up with some good jokes. Yeah.
All right. So you're ready for the first question. So the first question is about the role of persona in comedy. So how much of the comedian's voice is a character versus the real self?
I think you can't divide the two. I think they are interwoven to some degree. I think every performer, no matter how hard he tries, leaves a little bit of himself in his work. So, yeah, I think the personal voice is definitely there in the performer.
Okay. So, well, would you say that authenticity matters, or is there illusion part of the magic?
Oh, illusion is definitely part of the magic, but there has to be a bedrock of some kind of authenticity there to draw on to make it real to the audience.
Absolutely. All right. So punching up versus punching down. So where do comics versus comedians stand on this? So let me put it in some historical context. Did a jealous medieval prince become the first comedian by killing the court jester?
Dying is easy. Comedy is hard. I don't really see murder as funny in its real context, but in the make-believe world, it can be made funny. I don't think Yeah, I don't. If that actually happened, I don't think so. I don't think he's the real comedian. He's a
No, that's
tyrant. But
exactly. That was the question. Like, what could have gone down in that situation? So, is the audience agreement with the comedian a form of permission or alignment?
yeah, because he feeds off it, right? If the audience is giving him something back, that validates what he's doing. He's going to do more of it. And I say this from never having done stand up. So I mean, take that for what it's worth.
Well, we all know comedy, right? We all have seen it in some form or another, right? So
Yeah,
it is relevant. So cultural translation of comedy. So how do jokes that work in one country bomb in another?
I think the whole key to all that is commonality. The all good comedy has to have something that touches the audience and an experience that they have had. That's what makes part of it funny, I think. And if that experience is not universal, then it's not going to be funny, or it might even be offending. So there has to be some kind of crossover there.
So then would you say that truth is the meaning of facts?
Yeah. I mean, truth is vital. If your facts are untrue, are they really facts? I guess that's the question.
Well, are they meaningful?
They may be meaningful. They may mean something to somebody, but that doesn't mean they're true. I think truth is the core.
So that's a tricky question. So would you say that comics are more universal while comedians are more culturally specific?
Wow. Yeah, to a degree. I guess it depends on what kind of comic you are. Are you a shock comic where you're just out there throwing bombs and trying to offend people and just get a reaction, or are you trying to get a message across?
Right.
There's plenty of comics that have been culturally significant, and I see a comic mostly. I look at my own experience, just telling jokes and trying to be funny, and as a as a guy working in the Los Angeles area trying to be an actor, I spent most of my time working in restaurants, right? So as a bartender, I told a lot of jokes. And
Ah,
now don't ask me for one now because I can't remember any of them anymore. But that was me being a comic to a almost captured audience. They're sitting at my bar.
mhm.
And, you know,
So would you say that so let's put it in a different context. So crowd work versus crafted work. So if comics riff like influencers in the comments section and comedians perform like in reaction videos, where is the sweet spot?
hmm. Um, well, as a professional comedian, I would think you'd want to do both, and you're definitely on social media doing all that. But then you're also looking for a reaction from your audience. That I would assume that that's a good guide as to how you continue with your comedy. If
Mhm.
they're not laughing, maybe you need to make a change.
That's for sure. So what happens when a comic leans too much into crowd work or when a comedian gets heckled?
Well, I haven't experienced that, but I would assume that if you go up on stage as a comedian and you get heckled and you don't handle it well, you either don't go back or you learn real quick what to do. Um, yeah, those are situations you just got to muscle through, I would assume.
Right. Just kind of wing it. So, advertising and self promotion. So, who advertises themselves more, the comic, the comedian, or the magician? You know that place where you're not conscious and you're not sleeping either? That's your power bill to the electric company. Right here. I want us to be here with free energy, where the Wardenclyffe Tower meets the Eiffel Tower. But that's not where we are. We are here, where you've got the utility and you've got residential solar. Between these two, we know which one saves you money. This is where we can go in the meantime. But this is where I want us to be now, and this can be done now. So let me deputize you to represent DOSE, Department of Solar Efficiency, and let's get on the podcast and get the message out today. See you soon.
Oh, I mean, self-promotion is the key to any entertainment, right? You have to put yourself out there. Yeah, it's vital for all three, I would think. But as just being a comic, a funny guy, I mean, it's not that important.
Mm-hmm.
But if you're a professional, yeah.
So is self-promotion seen as selling out, or is it necessary for survival?
Well, it's necessary for survival.
Right.
It depends on, I think, what you're willing to do for that survival, though. I mean, if you as a comedian are broaching a topic that seems to be controversial, and then suddenly you back down because someone says, "Oh, I'm offended," or something like that, maybe you're not doing your job. Because I see comedians as a key in breaking boundaries and pushing boundaries, and maybe speaking a little truth when it hurts.
Mm-hmm. That's for sure. So, all right. So censorship and offense. So does a comic avoid offense while a comedian courts it to prove a point, like a magician?
Yeah, I mean, I would think so, because a comic, he's right in front of his people, generally speaking, face to face, telling jokes to friends or people he's just met. I would think he wouldn't want to offend them too much, depending on the personality, I suppose.
Right.
A comedian, I think, like I said, I think that's part of his job, is to push those boundaries. A magician, I don't know how he offends other than, lop somebody's limb off accidentally or something. I don't know.
Right. So who survives better in the cancel culture environment? The comic, the comedian, the magician, or the mudslinger?
I got to go with the magician, just because it seems like that would be the least offensive thing to do. A mudslinger is going to sling no matter what, right?
Right,
Because
exactly.
he just loves that initial immediate reaction, whatever he gets out of that. And a comedian's got a tightrope to walk. He got to keep working. I think, yeah, I mean, a comic, he's just telling jokes, so he'll probably be able to survive pretty well. But a magician, I think, is the most easy to survive.
Except for the part where they can mess up for permanently, right?
Yes.
So timing and delivery, is it a science or an art? So do comics rely more on structure and comedians more on rhythm and emotion?
Yeah, it's both, I think. And the more practiced you are at it, I guess it becomes an integral science art thing. Mm-hmm. Your experience determines your ability to read your audience and how to play them, I guess. And but it's definitely, it's definitely an art as well as a science. So, and with that unspecific answer,
oh, works. That one works. So laughter versus applause. So are comics chasing laughs and comedians chasing applause breaks that validate the message?
Oh, I think everyone's chasing laughs. That's the core of the business. I guess as a professional, you have another layer that you have to worry about, but without the laughs, it doesn't exist.
Mm-hmm. So comedy is commentary. So when does a comedian cross into being a philosopher or a preacher?
There's been some great ones too, huh? Like George Carlin, maybe. Mm-hmm. I think it's a conscious decision, and I think it's, based on the comedian's innate abilities and what his message is trying to be. I think, some of the great ones have obviously delved into the philosophical and also the preacher as well, trying to teach their audience something about the world in which they exist.
So is that good, or does it dilute the humor?
Well, I think it's good if you can make it funny, because that's the
Aha.
basis of everything. It's got to be funny. And I think that goes back to touching on the universality or the commonality that he has with his audience and his audience members have with each other.
All right. So now we've got a new question for the podcast. So here it is. You're the first person that gets this one.
Uh-huh.
So it's the topic is board game Zoomcast, play versus performance. So if comedy were a board game Zoomcast, are you competing as the colorist, adding tone, mood, and shading, or the Foley artist, building punchlines with soundscapes and timing?
Well, I think I'm going to have to go with the first one.
The colorist?
Yeah. Because personally, I don't see myself in that second role. So
Okay. Okay. So you're kind of defaulting to it, but
Yeah.
kind of like how we have with the background. So you could see that as something relevant, right?
Right.
All right. So now here's where it gets a little deeper. So does comedy work better when it's painted vividly, I would argue as a comic, or when it's orchestrated sonically, which I would argue is the comedian?
Sonically as the comedian. Well, I think it's got to be vivid enough to stir the imagination of your audience. When you say sonic, is that sound-wise strictly? Strictly?
Well, yeah, if we're going to go with audio visual, the one's the visual, the other's the audio.
Yeah, I mean, it's tough because there's so many different kinds of comedy, especially when you start talking about physical comedy.
Right.
And, strange sound effects noises. There's all kinds of that some comedians use. So I don't know. I have to go with vivid, though. Vivid colors that people can really see. There's a place in my outlook for those physical comedies and the sound comedies, but I think they wear thin pretty quick. If you're only relying on that kind of stuff, I don't think it translates too far. You might be great to start with because you're different and funny, but that gets kind of boring kind of quick, I think. But that's just my personal opinion.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's the best one to have, is your personal opinion. So on the Comedians and Elevators podcast, we have a tradition where the previous guest has a question for the next guest.
Okay.
And so the previous guest was Marnie Bragg, and she has a question for you, Stephen, but she doesn't know you yet, right? And so the question is very simple. What is your favorite food?
Oh, cheese and crackers, I guess, as strange as that may sound. I could live on cheese and crackers forever, I guess. I don't know.
No, I've been delighted by, going somewhere and that being the first thing I experience is a nice hors d'oeuvre of cheese and crackers. Is that what you're alluding to, right?
Yeah.
All right. So last question, legacy. Who gets remembered? Will the comic's tight five survive time, or will the comedian's cultural point of view be more timeless?
Well, I think from the comic point of view, there's been some jokes that are centuries old. Maybe they've been reworked. But from a philosophical point of view, the comedian has a way of touching into humanity that I think has the legacy ability.
All right, we'll go with that. Well, Stephen, where can everybody find you online?
What is that? IMDb? IMDb, that's it. And my name's Stephen Zamora. Awesome. And I also have an Instagram page under Stephen R. Zamora.
Okay, very cool. Well, Stephen, thank you so much for being my guest. And everyone else, please like and subscribe. And we will see you in the next one.
Thanks, Keenan.